Good morning, friends. This is Chandra from Akulmac Technologies, and I graciously invite you to our show about skills gap that exists in India. And today we have very eminent personality on our show to discuss about this particular aspect. That is Mr. Neville Gaunt. Neville had a long career in FTSE 250 companies at both strategic and operational levels. His corporate and commercial finance background is gained over 30 years in international businesses, mainly in the oil and gas industry, dealing with large and small businesses and complex supply chains. He has accomplished track record of negotiating the business means of short and long-term commercial, political, and environmental forces that influence all decisions. Neville Gaunt is also well-known international keynote speaker and a co-author of a bestseller book called Is Your Mind Fit for Goals? The Missing Link to Your Success. Go and read this book. Good morning, Neville. Welcome to TopBrass Likeable Leaders.
Good morning, Chandra. Very good welcome to you too.
And today we would like to discuss with you your teachings or your learnings of your long and vast career about teamwork.
Well, I've been in many teams. Working in the oil and gas industry is one thing that we do well, is we create teams together quite frequently. And they're multidisciplinary teams across the world. So you have to deal with lots of cultures, lots of people, lots of egos, lots of different ways of people talking. The beauty is it was all done in English, so I had an advantage because it is my first language after all. But teamwork's a funny thing, isn't it? We don't really do anything in school or university that's team oriented in the academic world. Have you noticed that? We do it for, we play sport, cricket. I hear it's quite big in India. You might have even invented it, but we'll argue about that later, shall we? Being a British or English. But we don't do anything academically as a team player. All of our exams are individual. And we're all pushing forwards as an individual. This is about you. You've got to beat the world. You've got to do this and do that. And of course, for a lot of people, that's pretty hard. We'd much rather work as a team. But what is this word team? What do you understand by this word teamwork? What does it mean to you?
Well, as far as my understanding goes, teamwork is it's a collective work by individuals, but they align their thoughts together to achieve one result for one group or one team. So that is the way I understand. So basically, collaboration and individual thinking coming together to achieve one result is what I understand as teamwork.
No, that's brilliant, and I think we need to understand what it means to each of us. So forget the dictionary, forget Googling it. But let me tell you, if you Googled it, you would Google the word teamwork, and you would get 176 million hits in 0.58 of a second. Now, the problem with that is, which one's got your name on it? You cannot possibly, even in a day, go through 176 million Google hits. If you can, you're a better speed reader than I am. Good luck. But the point is, it's got to have meaning to you. And I like what you said there. I call teamwork 1 + 1 is greater than 2. Because if your collective mind and my collective mind, and we have regular conversations, we do know that we come up with a better result had we done it individually. So that's why 1 + 1 is greater than 2. Now, all the mathematicians out there are saying that's not possible. Well, it's not possible in maths, but it is possible in the real world of work. And it's only possible if you've got the right attitude, if you're prepared to communicate with people, and if you're prepared to work with others. Because if you don't work with others, you will get a less than optimal solution. None of us are that brilliant that we will come up with the best solution every time. And if you think you are, well, I think you need to go and think again, because you've got the wrong attitude. You may be told that, and yeah, you've got to put your best in. You've got to be totally committed and courageous to talk with these other people. But the key thing is, you've got to listen to what other people are saying. So let's take this teamwork thing, break it down a little bit more, because the majority of teams are quite small, in my experience. You may be working in I worked in a company that had 30, 40,000 people. But we didn't all work together at the same time. There were little clusters of not 100 people, but 4 or 5. Is that your experience, that people work in relatively small teams?
Well, the maximum team that I've handled in my corporate world is about one single chunk of about 30 people. And I have personally worked with a team of about 700 people within the parameter of 700 people
Yep,
worldwide, even though
yep,
the company had more than 200,000 people working for them.
yep,
So
yep.
my team was like a tiny drop in the ocean.
But you tend to find that you work in little clusters. You may have a project team of 50 or a couple of hundred, but each of those is broken down into little clusters. So you'll have one small team, which could be one person doing something over here. I mean, typically the legal team would be quite small. They would be working within the team, but listening to what everyone is trying to do. And that might be one person, it might be 2. You could have the real core project team, and typically there are only about 5 or 6 people in that core project team. So these teams actually are quite small, and yet all of the models, all of the business models, all of the psychometric type models that have been built over the years actually rely on teams being quite large. So let's go a little bit technical for a minute. Have you heard of Belbin, the Belbin model?
No, I have not heard that.
Okay, well, Myers-Briggs.
Yes.
But yeah, okay. So we've hit one. Now Myers-Briggs works on 16 types of people. So within a small team, you've got to cover 16 types, which means you've got to be agile and versatile to cover all those 16 types. The Belbin model, which is perhaps a bit more relevant in the West, it's quite often used, has got 9 types.
Okay.
And in the Belbin model, you talk about people that are completer finishers. So as an accountant, I would have started my career as a completer finisher.
Okay.
And over a while, other people do that, and I don't complete a finish. I actually do the leadership management bit. Okay, so we all go through this stuff, and it's all very relevant, but we have to cover all of these types. So even in small teams, you've got to be agile, versatile, adaptable, and how you do that is we're going to go back to this very first day you and I started this series of webinars. You've got to have the right attitude to listen, because it's one of the biggest skills we've got. But if you were to go into a teamwork arena, listening doesn't come into it. But if we're not listening, it's never going to go anywhere. And the other thing is, people listen to respond. What we need to be doing is listening to think. And that's back to this, 1 + 1 is greater than 2. Because if you're just constantly listening to respond to what I'm saying, and we're going back over old ground, we won't get the and element. You won't push me, I won't push you, I don't be worried about saying something quite stupid, actually. Well, we can have a laugh over something that comes out that's quite stupid, but you need to get it out of the way, because sometimes the question you don't ask is the stupid one. And we know we know that from being in the classroom. Go ahead.
Yeah, so one of the things that I would like to inform you is that the key element, as far as I can see in my own team, is the reliance on each other. Because I think, as you rightly pointed out, it starts with attitude. So the first attitude to build is you rely on others, others rely on you. Even though you hate each other in your work, it doesn't matter as long as you have the ability to be part of a team and you have a reliance within the team. I think that is where the starting point. And why I'm making this observation at this point is the military people teach you this very well. And the different soldiers, they come from different background, different religion and all that, but they rely as one platoon, and they don't backstab their platoon. They fight together. Whether they have individual thinking at that point in time does not matter, because they are working towards one goal, that is defeating the enemy. And their individual differences are not they are not visible, so they rely on each other even though they don't talk to each other. So from this example, uh, there are few people who have come out of military service, and they are doing training on the team building activities, and they use physical activity as an example to do team building. So I think that is where starting point, and then obviously that is not the end. So once the reliance comes to the team, then I think the way forward is to basically make them more cohesive in the corporate world.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And being in many years in corporate life, I've been on lots of these team building programs external to the organisation. We call them outbound courses here. Where you go on a trek, halfway up a small mountain, and you just make sure that you're working together. Leaders come to the front, replicating what they do in the armed forces is brilliant. One thing that they can't replicate in the armed forces is the fact that it's life or death. One of the real drivers in this platoon or a small company of people is that if they get it wrong, someone dies.
True.
Now in business, you can't. That's not replicable. You could make a big mistake, but very, very rarely. I mean, I come from oil and gas. If we make big mistakes, someone might die. If we got the HSE wrong. But it's a pretty rare event in the type of businesses we're talking to here. But if we were to think that it could be life or death, life or death of my business, if I get it wrong, then it starts to change the focus a little bit. And this is all about getting the focus for your organisation right. And a lot of people, again, down this team arena, we're not, in business, it's cutthroat.
Right.
And you know it yourself. If you're going, if an organisation is tendering for business and you're one of 50, there's no thoughts of collaboration. There's no thoughts of being a team player here. This is first past the post. Just like a graduate leaving university, there's one job and there's 1,000 applicants. How do you get your CV to the top of the list? And we're all in it, let's not say this is a nice place to be. That's reality. So there's no thought of collaborating with people, being a team player. And that's where we make a big mistake. Because it may be that Alchemac, for instance, you may have 80% of that tender in your capability, but you haven't got 20%. Do you blag it, okay, and say you have got that 20%? Or do you go to another company that is really good in their field that is a competitor with Alchemac typically, and say to them, there's a tender here, together we might win it. Individually, I've got less of a chance. How about working together? Now, I'm putting you on the spot here, okay? But does that ever come up in your thought process?
Yes, I think the business has changed quite a bit in last 10 years or so, or 8 years, where the industry 4.0 is driving the whole these
Yep,
collaborations, because there's not a single company which can fulfill the requirement of industry 4.0. So
yep,
uh, most of the companies, whether they are tier 1 companies or mid-tier companies, they are forced to collaborate, because there's no way they can individually win any contract from industry 4.0. So I think we can take example of any government contract. There is no company, at least I can talk about India and some other countries, where the contracts are so huge, they are humongous. Even the Americans can't fulfill as one individual company those contracts which are coming out of India. So they are collaborating with multiple companies like IBM, HP, and a bunch of Indian large companies will collaborate and bid in the tender. So that is happening. But I think the moot point here is whether they are one team, which I personally believe
exactly,
they are not.
exactly,
They are, when they are even bidding together, they are still fighting with each other.
exactly. Now, this is where my background, if you like, my years of working in oil and gas, I can, I can, I know that some collaborations work better than others. Even with the same companies, some collaborations work better than others, and it's all down to the individual. Now, I was lucky enough, being a relatively small company in the industry, that I would move from one joint venture to another to another. So I'd literally working multiple joint ventures around the world. And although my company name went with me, or I followed my company name, if you like, we could have Shell, BP, Exxon, even the Indian government, you know, and it depends upon the person that turns up to that meeting as to what's going to happen. So teamwork actually is very personal. We've all got to have it. We've got to be agile. We've got to be ready and adaptable to listen to other people. Otherwise, 1 + 1 will not be greater than 2.
Right.
And we'll come back to that all the time, you know. But as you say, there isn't a company in the world that can satisfy these multi-billion-dollar, pound, rupee contracts. It's just impossible. But if you do get together with other organisations, stop fighting. Just say, this is the piece we want. This is the piece we can do. We'll help you do your bit. And create it as a proper joint venture. But you've got experience of it, and I've got experience of it in the commercial world. It just doesn't happen.
It
And
doesn't.
even if you win the contract, it doesn't happen. It gets worse. Because people say, oh, they've got some of the juicy stuff. You know, I want some of the juicy stuff because it's more profitable. Rather than focusing on the job ahead, getting it done to the best of your ability, using your brain to make sure it happens, and forgetting about the other stuff, because the other stuff might happen next time. And again, this is about focus, really. And it comes back to this word attitude, sadly, every single time. But it is true. The 4.0 is really, it's forcing people to collaborate. So if you're going to be forced to do it, then why not work out how best it can be for you? Not to go in there with a, we're going to beat this lot, you know, because this lot are actually your team. I always find it interesting, especially working with small retailers, that they've got an online shop, They're very good at the manufacturing bit and the development bit and the customer service bit. But what they do is they outsource their delivery. You know, there's thousands of companies in India that do just focus on delivery. And I'm not talking about, you know, TNT, etc., but the post office that delivers.
Right.
But they never think of that as part of their team. And if it goes wrong, they blame them.
That's true.
And yeah, it's everywhere. It's true. And retail's classic. You know, we've just had a very big celebration Christmas recently, and you know, with 5 children, we have lots of things being delivered.
Right.
And I would say one in 5 deliveries went completely wrong. Another 1 in 5 weren't very good. Another 1 in 5 didn't actually deliver on the day they said. So can you imagine? You know, you're waiting in for a delivery, and you're tracking it on the app. The app says, "Oh, it's only a mile away, and there are 5 people in front of you." You know, we've all done this. And then it says, and it's just blip, 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 and it comes to 10 o'clock, which is the last delivery in the evening. And then an hour later, it says it'll be delivered at 8 o'clock in the morning. Well, you know, what's happening here? You know, you waited in all afternoon for this delivery. They're part of your team. You know, be responsive to every element of your team. You know, you may be a small business, a one-man band, or 2 or 3 people. But if you're not working as a team, ultimately, it's the customer at the end that's not going to get the service. And the other thing is, you may have fights within your team. I like to call them conversations. You know, because a fight is when you really believe in something, you really know it's got to happen, and you really think that should happen for us to make the result better. That's not a fight, that's just you being passionate about your element of it. You want to get your message over. And for that, you've got to listen, and you need to collaborate, and you need to have a conversation. Because as we both know, fighting is a waste of time. So this is a really, you know, teamwork is a really big subject arena. We go through school and university not having any team exam. The only team exam is when we play sport, typically. But let's think of the other place where we've got a team. At home.
Right.
You know, you may be living with your parents. You may be the breadwinner of the house. You may have children. You may have a significant partner. But at the end of the day, if you're living under one roof, you're working as a team. Do you really work as a team? It's a question we can all answer. We may not like the answer.
Yeah, so I think it's a very nostalgic subject. I think I would put it like that.
Yeah, it's a good word.
Because in the past, they behave like a team, and we don't behave anymore. But I think it's a timeline, and the future generations will talk the same thing about us. You know, in the past, those guys were living like a team in their family, but you know, we are not doing that. So I think that is why I want to say that, you know, I'm feeling a little nostalgic, because when I was a small kid, our family was a united family, like 50 people living together when I was a small kid. But then we became nucleus families after that. So now the family in India comprised of 4 to 5, maximum 6 to 7 people. So, so if you're talking about team of 6, 7 people, yes, we are a team, but we are no longer a team of 50 to 60 people, which used to be, you know, 50 years back.
It's very true, but the interesting thing here is some families that have become that nuclear family, you know, 4 or 5, have still got 50 in their close family. And some families are kept together And there's a glue, and we've spoken about this before, there's a glue that one or two of those individuals are the glue, and they regularly phone the other family or email someone, oh, we're going to have a get together, you're all invited, apart from when one part of the family is not talking to you and they're not invited. So what part of teamwork's fallen down there? I mean, I can see you smiling because you've got examples and so have I.
No, it is the right thing, because there is always a glue in that. So I would say that the extended family is like it's like an alloy mixture of multiple metals, but the small family is like an atom, which has bunch of protons, bunch of
Yeah,
neutrons,
yeah,
electrons rotating around. So I think it's like that. But
yeah,
atoms cannot exist freely, because if they are existing freely, they are becoming ions. So they have
absolutely.
to become into an alloy with the rest of the extended family.
And we know, as now we're talking to the business audience, okay? So as the business audience, sometimes we forget actually that those family connections, that if we actually say, oh, it's their problem, we're demonstrating an attitude in a family context that we're probably taking into a business context. Oh, that person did this, that person did that, Start to think about, anyone can be better if they want to be. And the way to be better is to work out how good you are. So look at what you're doing, and it doesn't matter what context. So there's a social context with a family. There's another social context with your mates. There's another social context with people you play a sport with. And you will find that when you're engaged in something, your attitude doesn't change. But when you're disengaged, your attitude changes quite considerably.
I fully agree with you on this subject. So if you are mingling with 100 people or maybe a lot of people, then your attitude is more welcoming. But if you don't have too many friends, then you are not that welcoming. So I fully agree with you on that.
And it will be consistent across the board. So if you don't work well in the family setting, the likelihood is you won't work well in a network. You won't be a team player.
Right.
And India is looking for 20% growth. 6% growth is not good enough. To get from 6 to 20 is a huge increase. It's nearly 300% increase. Okay?
And I think
To get there, you've got to be your best.
And I think that is why the Indians have to learn this art of improving attitude and becoming a much more wider, extended team. Otherwise, this is just a dream. It is just 20% is just a dream on the paper. It will never become a reality.
You're absolutely right. And let's just, as we're coming to the close, let's just throw in just a little snippet here. A team doesn't have to be people. A team could be people and inanimate objects. So you and I are working as a team, one-to-one here, but we're also relying upon an internet provider, electricity to run each of our machines, lights so people can see us. And you start to think further and further and further, the fact that you're warm and I'm warm, so there's heating involved, all of those are completely out of our control, but they're inanimate objects and we just expect them to happen. So, do you play golf?
I play tennis, but I don't play golf.
Tennis is good enough, because although you have an opponent, you also have a pitch, a tennis court, which is inanimate. You cannot control the tennis court. Right. You have a racket and you have a ball. And the ball is inanimate and the racket is inanimate. And your team is you, the racket and the ball. In golf, your team is you, a ball and a club. Have you noticed there's two things that are common apart from the ball? There's you.
Right. Yes.
So who turns up every time? If you turn up to be your best, then it doesn't matter whether you're working with other people or playing tennis, or the opponent, which is the other person. It doesn't matter who else turns up, but you need to turn up with the right attitude and ready to make 1 + 1 greater than 2.
So I think we had a very nice discussion, and I think we just touched the surface. There's a lot of learning in this particular area to improve attitude, to become a better team player, to work towards benefit of your team, your company, your country. I think the journey is very long, and I sincerely urge my viewers to reach out to you, to basically learn from you directly, and small tips and bits. Basically, people can improve their attitude and become a better person. So I really urge my viewers to reach out to Mindfreak Limited. I will leave your website at the end of this video so that we can directly approach you. And with this hope, I will say goodbye to you for today, Neville. It was, as usual, fantastic talking to you. We will meet next week, same time, same day, on Tuesday every week, and we will discuss some other aspect around attitude.
Thanks very much, Chandra. I really enjoyed it. And I really do hope that people realise that however good you are today, you can be better tomorrow. And how much better you can be is entirely up to you. If you want to be, you can be. All you've got to do is find that little nugget. There isn't 1,000% improvement anywhere anymore because it's all been done. But there's 1% in you. And after a few weeks, that 1% multiplies like compound interest. You put a rupee in the bank and it's worth a lot more at the year end. And that's the whole point. If you put the effort in today, you'll be a far better person tomorrow. But don't forget to improve and get the 1 + 1, you need to work with other people. You're not there in isolation. Just start to work with others. And look carefully because there's lots of opportunity out there. And the first time you say, I can't, stop. Look in the mirror and say, actually, I can. I just don't know how. That's a different discussion. But it's been a pleasure as ever. It's a massive subject, this arena. There's no silver bullet here. But together we'll help the audience create their own silver bullet and it'll work for them. Thanks very much, Charlie. Really appreciate it.
It was really pleasure talking to you, and I really hope that some of your learnings which you are willing to share with our audience, and it will be very helpful to whoever is listening or whoever reach out to you directly. So see you next time, same day, next week.